Sag mal, wann ich starten kann.
Bitte schön.
Okay, ich kann starten. Herzlich willkommen. Mein Name ist Rudolf Fischer. Ich bin einer der beiden Leiter vom Archiv der Avantgarden. Und genau hier befinden wir uns auch. Wir befinden uns im japanischen Palais, wo wir derzeit ein Interim haben. Das heißt, wir sind, bis unser neues Museum, das im Blockhaus geplant ist, fertiggestellt ist, sind wir hier am Arbeiten und am Denken. Hinter dem Namen Archiv der Avantgarden verbirgt sich eine Sammlung von Objekten und Kunstwerken. Genauer gesagt, es ist eine Schenkung des deutsch-italienischen Sammlers Egidio Mazzona, die zu uns im September 2016 nach Dresden gekommen ist. Das ist eine wahnsinnig große Zahl, 1,5 Millionen. Und dahinter verbergen sich eigentlich auch vor allem, was Sie hier auch sehen, Archivmaterialien. Das heißt Briefe, Dokumente, Fotos, Filme, was man sich so vorstellen kann. Aber auch die dazugehörigen Kunstwerke, die dazugehörigen Designobjekte, die sehen Sie jetzt auch, glaube ich, gerade, ja. Aber wichtig ist auch, dass ich noch mal ganz kurz erwähne, dass es sich bei uns nicht nur um Kunst handelt, sondern das Archiv der Avantgarden vertritt alle Strömungen im 20. Jahrhundert, auch Musik, auch Literatur und sehr viel politische Kunst. Egidio Mazzona hat in den 60er Jahren das Sammeln begonnen und auch aus diesem Grund ist die ganze Sammlung auch sehr stark auf die Konzeptkunst der 60er Jahre abgestimmt. Er hat aber dann weiter gesammelt und hat eigentlich am Ende das ganze 20. Jahrhundert abgedeckt. Von ca. 1900 bis 1980. Und das Besondere an der Sammlung ist, dass es eigentlich auch das Prinzip der historischen Avantgarden abdeckt, also die Verbindung zwischen Leben und Kunst irgendwie auch darstellt und vor allem auch die Hierarchien auflöst zwischen den verschiedenen Kunstgattungen. Das heißt, wir haben hier Malerei neben Design, neben Kunstgewerbe, neben Architektur oder auch neben eben politischen Künstlern. Und wir wollen euch in den nächsten Wochen, Monaten das Archiv genauer vorstellen. Das heißt, wir wollen auch auf Instagram und Facebook weitere Schaufenster geben, weitere kleine Filme produzieren, wie wir arbeiten auch mit dieser Sammlung von 1,5 Millionen Objekten. Wir wollen sie auch in den nächsten Jahren inventarisieren, komplett digitalisieren. Wir werden aber euch auch zeigen, was wir planen, auch inhaltlich mit den Objekten. Das Besondere bei uns ist es ja, dass wir bekommen ein Museumsgebäude, aber wir sind kein Museum, wir sind kein Forschungsinstitut und wir sind kein richtiges Archiv, aber eigentlich sind wir alles zusammen. Und das Archiv der Avantgarden soll im neuen Blockhaus eine ganz neue Institution werden, die eigentlich einmalig ist in Deutschland, vielleicht auf der ganzen Welt, genau wie die Sammlung. Und da wir euch heute jetzt nicht alles zeigen können, euch ein paar Highlights, 3 ausgewählte Objekte aus dem Archiv zu zeigen, so 3 Schätze. Und wir haben die vorbereitet bei uns in unserem, der übrigens auch ganz schick ist, mit Blick auf die Elbe. Und mein Kollege Przemek Stroszek wird euch jetzt ein paar Objekte zeigen. Ich habe nur ganz vergessen zu sagen, wir sind ein internationales Team. Das heißt, bei uns arbeiten Kolleginnen aus Italien, aus Polen, aus Brasilien. Mein Co-Leiter ist aus Brasilien. Das heißt, wir sprechen durcheinander alle Sprachen. Und wir werden jetzt die Präsentation auf Englisch halten. Ich verabschiede mich und gebe das Mikro weiter.
Okay. I decided to talk in English because it's like the most international language from all the languages. I don't. Do you hear me or should I? It's okay. So I decided to pick up three objects together. This is this advertisement of Kurt Schwitters and Theo van Desburg of one of their Dada evenings. The other object is this device by Marcel Duchamp, created in the 1960s, and the last one is about pop art and the sculpture by Klaas Oldenburg. This why I selected all those objects. I mean, like Archiv der Avantgarden is so huge and it has such a big material that it's impossible to talk about it even in 1 year, what we have here. But I wanted to only show you how some objects can relate also to the documentary material we have here in ADA. Because this is what is amazing and important with this archive, that in different segregators we can explore some different documentary material around the avant-garde. For example, this advertisement by Theo van Desburg and Kurt Schwitters, which was a collaboration of two artists, one from Germany, other from Netherlands, was very important also for the idea of Dadaism, because Dadaism was an important movement which crossed the borders, and it started as a set of performances at Cabaret Voltaire in 1916, and then was developed to other performance also as a collective collaboration in the 1920s. So the small Dada evening program is very somehow disrupted by viewing. It's very hard to read because the fonts have different shape and different structure. They are sometimes upside down. They are over each other. And what we can see about this advertisement is that there are some fragments of the Dadaist manifestos by Tristan Tzara, some quotations by Francis Picabia, upside down, some fragments of the poems by Kurt Schwitters. And also this what we can read, that in the introduction of the program, Theo van Desburg was reading his Dada Sophie theory, Schwitters was reciting his poems and his banal thoughts, and also in the program there was a mechanical figure dance by Vilmos Huszar, who created a special mechanical figure, and this was accompanied by the music of Eric Satie, Ragtime Dada, and Tremarcie per la Bestie by Vittorio Rieti. Thanks to this advertisement and this program, we can also explore what actually has been performed during this performance. So when we look closely to the archive of the avant-garde, we can find the magazine März and also the collection of Banalitäten, which have been also recited during the performance. In other magazine of März, we see this mechanical figure by Vilmos Huszar, which has been also included in this performance here in the 1923 in Netherlands. The other thing is the Dada Sophie, which has been in introduction by Theo van Desburg, and in fact it was What is Dada pamphlet. It was published especially for this very event, for this small Dada evening in 1923. And as we see, the font of Dada, and here the font of the red Dada here is the same, and we can assume that it was created by Theo van Desburg. And some as well, when we look at the other visual material, like those hands, which are pointing here with those, together with the black squares, who are also at the advertisement, we can clearly see that it was a collective work of artists from different nationalities. This what is also amazing about the archive we have here and the documents are also those notes, because when we think about Dada, we always think about literature or think about artistic production, visual production, but we very much omit and neglect the sounds. And what we can find in the archive, there are also notes of Vittorio Rieti, Tremarcie per la Bestie, which has been played during this performance, as well Eric Satie Parade. This was a music score to the Russian ballets from 1917 with an introduction of libretto of Jean Cocteau and stage design by Pablo Picasso. And in this music score, Eric Satie was using ragtime as a new jazz kind of music sound, and this was also included here, as we see in the advertisement. So this what is amazing about this all material here is that we can clearly recreate this performance. We can cite those poems. We can look at the mechanical figure. If there will be a piano, we can play Tre Marce per la Bestia or Parade and really look at all those important things together with the declamation of What is Dada, which was this Dada Sophie introduction by Theo van Desbroek. If someone would speak here Dutch, it would be easier, but you can clearly see that there is so much amazing material here to know what was actually going on during this performance, because there are not so many photographs remained and documented. This collaboration between Schwitters and van Desbroek didn't last only in 1923 when they created this advertisement. They made this Dada Holland tour in Netherlands. This is from Den Haag. And they also produced a very important book, which was one of the numbers of the magazine März, Die Scheuche, which also used a very important typography, which had some resemblances together with this advertisement. So when we think about all of this material, we can clearly reconstruct all those important histories around avant-garde. If we would have only this, it wouldn't be possible. This is like this richness what we have here in ADA in one place. The other thing I would like to show is this device rotorelief by Marcel Duchamp. Marcel Duchamp was also connected to Dada, to New York Dada group. He didn't have so much contact with Kurt Schwitters or Theo van Desbroek, but he was much more connected to Tristan Tzara and other members of Paris Dada. This what is important for Marcel Duchamp is that he was looking at the ordinary objects and was thinking about how to, through the artistic gesture, change the meaning of an ordinary object into an artistic object. In the 1920s, there was a huge discussion how to use turntable as a kind of artistic practice. So, for example, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy was saying that turntable doesn't have to only reproduce sound, it has to produce sound. So this we can see as a forerunner of DJ culture today, when DJs are creating sounds from gramophone. And Marcel Duchamp, he was thinking about turntable in a different way, not to produce or reproduce sound, but to look at the turntable and think about it, how it can produce a new visual language of abstraction, because it was not about sound, it was about new visuality, how those discs which he created in the 1930s were put on the turntable and filmed as a kind of abstract cinema. He co-produced one of the movies with Man Ray, another member of Dadaist New York scene, in 1926 called Anemic Cinema, where they wanted to create this kind of illusion of depth, because these discs rotated on a certain speed. Show this kind of three-dimensionality and optic illusions, and also this is also very important for thinking about kinetic art and op art and how to put some art in motion and create from those practices new meanings. When we also think about this device, there is in the archive a number of Minotaur magazine, which also shows on the cover one of the discs. So we can also clearly see that this thing together, this device together with this magazine is also very important on the side of the connections between objects and also documentation of those objects. This what is important is that this magazine has been published in 1934, and those first edition of this device called rotorelief, this means like the rotary reliefs, has been created in 1935, then in 1953 and in 1965. And we have in ADA, we have the device from 1965, so 3 days before Marcel Duchamp's death. And this what is very important about here, maybe we can put it like very closely, is that it comes from Andy Warhol collection. So it means that we have this device here, recreated in 1965, which comes from the Andy Warhol collection. It has been put on auction in 1988 in New York in Sotheby's. This is also very important when we think about the development of the avant-garde, because we can clearly see that new generations of artists, like Andy Warhol in the 1960s, were very much connected to avant-garde and also looked at avant-garde artists as their masters. Andy Warhol was very much impressed by Marcel Duchamp, because Marcel Duchamp was the first person who was thinking about the ordinary objects and the idea behind them and how to change their meanings. Andy Warhol was also filming Marcel Duchamp. They knew each other. He created one of the videos of him. And this is why Marcel Duchamp was very important also for the artists related to pop art, American pop art. And at the end, I wanted to show you a very interesting sculpture made by Claes Oldenburg, another artist connected to American pop art, who recreated a fire plug. Claes Oldenburg is very known from enlarging the objects, making ordinary objects very big or very small. Normally, fire plug is kind of this size, so this is like the fire plug which is smaller. And what we can see here is it has a kind of form of a stamp, so we can stamp the letters or stamp the documents. It has been created in Chicago in 1968, which is also very important when we think about what was going on in Chicago in 1968, especially given the fact that it was a time of a very big student protests against the Vietnam War. And Claes Oldenburg was very known as an artist who was against the Vietnam War and created a lot of also objects and manifestos against Vietnam. And when we think about this fire plug, which is normally looks like that, which is like some kind of upside down, we can see that it has a kind of a silhouette of a fragmented human body without legs, without other parts of the body, and it's somehow melted. So we can also think about this sculpture upside down as a kind of reference to fragmented bodies of the war, because in Vietnam the very dangerous napalm was used to burn human bodies. So when we think about this fire plug, which now it isn't a fire plug anymore, we can look at it also from the profile, in the context of the war and in the context of the Vietnam War as well. Because when we think about this in the profile, we can see a clearly reference to the ancient sculpture, the victory over Samothrace, which has here wings. It is beheaded, doesn't have any head. Here are another parts of the body. So those references to antiquity and to the victory and to the war are also here, included in this piece. Other references to the antiquity we can see clearly when we think about this image of a catalog by Klaus Oldenburg, which shows this fire plaque as a fragment of a Greek column, an Ionic column which could be placed as one of the statues. So this is everything. When we all those meanings are very important when we think about this object and look at it from different angles, not only like en face, but also from profile, upside down. We can also see how many new meanings it generates. And this was also very important for avant-garde artists to change art and to look at artistic practice not as a stable form, but a form put into the motion, and also as a collective collaboration, which I wanted to talk about, presenting this poster by Schwitters and Theo van Desburg. I don't know if we have much more time to talk about, but if you have like any questions, I will be happy to answer.